Today, Julius Caesar, Shakespeare's Julius Caesar. 1599 is the date usually assigned. For students of Shakespeare, by the way, and Korean students in general, who I find notoriously ignorant of dates. In fact, I once made a statement I think may be true. I have never met a Korean student who knows a single date. That's incredible. Not one? Okay, explanations, of course. This is a digression, but this is important. Of course, students memorize probably hundreds of dates for their exams, but this is a perfect example of what happens in Korean education, I think. Of course, they memorize page after page for their history or social studies exams and all that, and then it's all gone. Just like they memorize other things, all gone. Well, a good question is the purpose of high school education to store the mind with data, facts, information? And maybe it's not. Maybe the purpose is to educate the kids to think or memorize, both ideally, prepare them to actually learn things later. Maybe that's true. Another fact is that students take so many courses and memorize so much material that it's not surprising that they strike it from their memories as quickly as they can, really, as soon as the exams are taken. Also, the learning style is cram, and the system supports that. I recently have come to understand that, for example, at Minsago, they have many quizzes. Quiz, test, quiz, test. Well, with quizzes, you can't forget. You have to retain because at least you're relearning. This is good. In the past, this has not been possible in Korea because of the size of classes. Of course, the classes at Minsago are small. Teachers can give quizzes, grade them. Still, with 35 in classes in Korean high schools, and I guess middle schools, it's still too many to give many quizzes. So, I'll leave that subject now, but there are some interesting things about it. But it is a glaring fact that I have never met a Korean student who knows a single date, even of Korean history. That's amazing. Okay, Julius Caesar, 1599. I began this by saying that a good, not device, but for the student who wants to know about Shakespeare, if the student simply remembers 1600 Hamlet, the student can rearrange everything around Hamlet and not make the kind of inconceivable errors of memory that many students, especially Korean students, make. Shakespeare, let's see, 1750 to 1790, or these incredible. Yesterday, a brilliant student, no longer living in Korea, Dr. Shin knows him. Okay, when did World War I end? I asked the boy. 1980? Well, come on. Korean students should at least remember that August 15th, 1945, soon, 2 weeks from now, you'll be celebrating it. August 15th, 1945 is the liberation, the independence of Korea after World War II. Independence from whom? Japan. World War II. Well, at least if World War II ended then, don't you think World War I maybe took place earlier? This is also showing that this also shows the tendency to memorize rather than think. Think logically. Okay, sorry, but didn't take long. Excuse me. I love Julius Caesar, and it is a great tragedy. It is. Sometimes people deny it that status, but no. Anyone who says no, I think, is wrong. It's moving, it's intelligent, it's has great poetry, it's wonderful. and it begins the great series of tragedies that Shakespeare wrote. Sometime I'll discuss why he wrote all those tragedies in a row, no comedies among them. It's an interesting question. But first to Julius Caesar. Historically, Caesar was born in 106 BCE, a wealthy patrician family. Patrician means their families, men had been senators for generations. He decided to make his mark by siding with the common people. Of course, he remained a patrician and all that. It's like a Kennedy becoming a Democrat. It's one way to achieve power. He was certainly a very ambitious and very intelligent man, as his writings show, and a great, great general. Okay, so in 66, I think, with Pompey and Crassus, he formed the first triumvirate. That meant that those three men shared immense power. Pompey and Crassus remained consuls, and the consuls had held the two most powerful offices in the Roman government. Consuls, though, lasted only 1 year, though they could be reselected. Pompey also held power outside of Italy, in Asia Minor, Syria, where he conquered he conquered Palestine in 63. Crassus was in North Africa. Anyway, these three held a lot of power. Caesar had promised never to bring his army into Italy. The power in Italy remained Pompey and Crassus and the Senate, of course. The year, I forget the date, but Caesar had conquered Europe, pretty much. Spain, France, especially Gaul, England. He had fought many battles there for many years and had been very successful. So he took his army and crossed the Rubachan River. The Rubicon in the northeast on the Venice side. I don't remember where. By doing so, and that's a famous expression, to cross the Rubicon is to make a statement saying, I want to claim power. He was making that statement. It was like a declaration of war. Okay. Well, this is after he had already defeated Pompey. Anyway, I'm getting too much into history. Our play opens in 44 BCE. In that year, he's in Rome with his army, a hero. Everyone adored him, everyone admired him. But the play opens, he is going to arrive in Rome and parade through the streets, a Roman tradition, probably give lots of gifts to the people and to the city. This was a very big occasion. Okay, the two tribunes, yes. The two tribunes, who are representatives of the common people and who don't trust Caesar and don't like him, in Act 1, Scene 1, scold the common people for putting on their best clothes and closing their shops and coming out to watch Caesar. Marullus and Flavius are their names. Their role is minor. Act 1, Scene 1 is minor stuff. Anyway, they scold the people for being so fickle, because not long before they had adored Pompey, and today they adore Caesar. Who tomorrow? Go back to your shops. This is ridiculous. The tribunes have a lot of power. They can veto any action taken by the Roman government. Of course, the government had been forced to grant these offices in the never-ending struggle to reconcile diverse elements within the government. Okay. The two tribunes also say, let's pull off the scarves and robes that have been put on the statues along the way. That's an important little detail. Okay. Scene 2. Now everything happens. It's a great scene, and we have almost nothing but great scenes from here on to the very end of the play. Brutus and Cassius, who are the two main characters of the play. Let me explain for a second. Julius Caesar is a play that centers on Brutus. It's the tragedy of Brutus. Caesar will be dead in Act 3. Although it's called Julius Caesar, it's not primarily about Caesar, unless one... even admitting that Caesar's ghost is still in Act 5, it's still not about Caesar. It's about Brutus. By the way, a striking parallel in literature is the Antigone of Sophocles. The Antigone of Sophocles is not about Antigone. It's about Creon. And Antigone is gone by 2/3 through the play. It's quite a striking parallel. There may be others, though, that I'm not aware of. Okay, so Cassius and Brutus are brothers-in-law too, but Brutus was the most respected Roman of, except for Caesar at this point. Everyone admired and respected Brutus, and Brutus looked up to Caesar like a father, and Caesar treated Brutus as a son. A wonderful relationship. But Brutus is troubled, and Cassius is very troubled, because of Caesar's remarkable rise to power. One more step, and Caesar will be made emperor. He will be in charge of everything. And the Senate will no longer have the power. That will be the end of the Roman Republic. The Republic had been around for 450 years, and one of Brutus's own ancestors had been a hero of the Republic, establishing Junius Brutus, making sure that something like democracy or more representative government or something, not power all in one man's hands, or even 2 or 3 people's hands, was not what controlled Rome. Okay, so Brutus questions... is going to question, Cassius is going to question Brutus. First of all, the scene opens, we are in an open square, a big open Roman square, and Mark Antony, who is Mark Antony is maybe the 3rd most important character in the play, or 4th after Caesar, maybe. He is huge. And by the way, when you think of Mark Antony in this play, and the similar, recognizable, same Mark Antony in Antony and Cleopatra, we have arguably the greatest character, one of the great characters in literature. Fascinating, profound. What Caesar does with Mark Antony in those 2 plays, no novelist has ever done with any character, I think. That's how great it is. Of course, he receives all this information. Everyone, and historians and other writers, had been fascinated by Mark Antony too. So Shakespeare inherited a lot of data, information about Mark Antony, but what he does is unbelievable. It's so tremendous. Okay, sorry. Antony is stripped down to almost naked. His job is to touch Calpurnia, Caesar's wife, who is barren, did not bear any children, had not borne any children. Touch her, run up to the other end of the square, touch a naked god or goddess of fertility, and then come back and touch Calpurnia. This superstition, and superstition is important in the first 3 acts of the play. Do you understand, Mark Antony? No problem. No problem, boss. Mark Antony, too, is maybe the most devoted follower of Julius Caesar. He's like a son, and at first we wonder how intelligent he is, but watch, it's tremendous. I know too much about this play. That's okay. So, roars from the crowd. Let's see now. Yeah, roars from the crowd. Then he performs this act, and then the whole crowd moves to a neighboring square, 100 meters away maybe. It's important because we will still be able to hear the roars of that crowd. But Brutus remains behind, and Cassius remains behind too. And now this great conversation begins. Cassius basically, let's understand, Cassius is already conspiring to murder Caesar. Cassius's grounds for murdering Caesar, though, are mostly personal envy, personal jealousy. And Cassius wants Brutus to join this conspiracy because if Brutus is a member of the conspiracy, its credibility, its respectability will be doubled, and people will accept, if they're successful, what they do. Brutus, you seem moody lately. You don't seem to be so affectionate toward me as you used to be. Have I offended you, or are you angry at me? All this is Cassius being very cunning. The evolution of Cassius in this play is one of the best things about the play, possibly the best thing about the play. It's wonderful what Shakespeare does with Cassius, because he's going to evolve from a cynical, cunning, manipulative man with his private little vendetta against Caesar to a great, generous, lovable, absolutely lovable character in Act 5. I sometimes wonder, is this believable? I'm not sure it is believable. I guess that's what the documents told Shakespeare, and that's what Shakespeare does with him. But Cassius is a great, great character, possibly greater than Brutus. In fact, I think he really is. Okay. And they're brothers-in-law, so they're both from the patrician class. They went to school together. All those guys knew each other and had grown up together. Okay, and Caesar among them, though Caesar's older. Brutus says, no, Cassius, Brutus, he loves to refer to himself in the third person. Somewhat pompous, a little bit humorless, self-absorbed right now because he's troubled. He's troubled about what's happening in Rome. And he's torn. Obviously he's torn. He doesn't want Caesar to be granted or to seize absolute power. He loves the Republic, and he wants the Republic to continue. But he loves Caesar too, and he respects and honors Caesar. And Brutus's respect is an important thing. If Brutus respects and loves a person, then that's a huge credit to that person. Okay. No, I'm troubled by things, Cassius, don't worry, and I'm constantly at war with myself. He says, don't worry. Then we hear a roar down the... First. Cassius says, frankly, it disturbs me that this man, Julius Caesar, who is just a single man, like us, should have risen to such a position of such power. And Cassius gives a famous speech in which he says, I can remember once he and I, Caesar and I, were crossing the Tiber River. It was winter, maybe. The water was high and cold. From the bridge, Caesar had said to Cassius, Cassius, I dare you. Let's jump into that river and swim to the other side. with that, both of them jump in. These Romans, right? I mean, super masculine, manly, manliness, tremendous. But while Cassius was swimming, rough, Caesar called, "Cassius, help me or I drown." And Cassius had saved Caesar's life. And Cassius's point is, and this man is now risen to this position of huge power over all of us, and the rest, he stands like a colossus, and we petty men creep around under his legs and look for humble deaths. I'm way off, not remembering the exact speech, but it's wonderful. And then he tells a second story about how they were in Spain, and Caesar had a terrible fever in his tent, and he was whimpering like a woman. And this man now will rule the world. This is unthinkable. So this is Cassius. Brutus says, "I know exactly what you're saying, and I have some idea of where you are leading me." No fool. No fool. At first we thought maybe he was a fool. Naive. Because Brutus is noble, and the word that's always used of Brutus over and over again, and not of anyone else even, noble. Everyone admires his devotion to the Republic. Everyone knows that he would give his life. He certainly would give his life for the Republic. He's an idealist. Noble is the word used of him. Idealist is the word that describes him best. He is an idealist. Idealistic about Rome especially, and the Republic. The Roman people, and the common people love him and admire him. There's nothing affected or fake about his attitude. But he's not a fool. I know where you're leading me, Cassius. I need time to think. And so right then we hear a roar from the crowd down 100 meters away. And another roar. And then the same crowd starts to come back, but silently. And Caesar is frowning. And everyone else is kind of looking like chidden children. Chid, chidden. Like they've been scolded. And Cassius says he will pluck Casca aside and ask Casca what happened here to explain. Casca is so sour, and Brutus is not sour, so in a way he doesn't even like Casca, probably doesn't like Casca, though they're the same class. I love this scene. So, Casca, what happened down there? What caused all this roar? And Casca gives this cynical, wonderful speech. Casca will later be developed into another play that maybe we will do because it's the last of the great tragedies, Coriolanus. Casca produces, in a sense, the idea, I think, of Coriolanus. Okay, Casca says, well, Mark Antony offered Caesar a crown. Not really a crown, a little coronet. And Caesar set it aside with his hand as if to reject it. And the crowd roared. The rabble, as he calls it, roared. And then Mark Antony offered a second time. And the second time he put it by. But he kind of wanted to keep his hand on it, says Casca. And the third time, same thing. And it looked like he really wanted to keep it and put it on his head. Roar from the crowd. And Casca says the whole thing was so stupid that he wanted to laugh, but he feared by laughing he would take in some of the bad air that the crowd had emitted from their common mouths because of the garlic and leeks and these low-class foods that the common people eat. Well, you can see Casca is an immense, more than snob. He is disdainful of the common people. His speech is so witty, though. Imagine, I didn't want to laugh because I feared I would take in some of that air. Left out a big detail. After the third time, Caesar then fell into an epileptic fit. He fainted. his body shaking and all that. But Casca pretends to think that breathing the air of the common people's breath caused the faint. Whoa, whoa, whoa. So cynical about the common people. I won't comment. I'm running out of time. I will comment. People, readers of that speech, think, God, this Shakespeare must have hated the common man. He must have been favored the aristocracy and disliked anything like democracy. Not true. And Coriolanus is about that. Not true, because one can find just as many speeches favoring the common people over the higher classes. We have done such things in King Lear, even in Antony and Cleopatra, but all the plays. All the plays contain some high tribute to common people. So it's hopeless to look for Shakespeare's attitude toward almost anything. Shakespeare was a dramatist. He made plays, and he used material as he found it, and as he judged it to be effective. And that, I think, is the bottom line. Okay, about religion or anything else. Okay, here we go. Casca's witty speech. And then he says, Caesar woke up and begged the pardon of the people around if he had offended anyone, and 3 girls wept and said, "No problem, nothing to forgive." But that's okay, says Casca cynically. They would have wept and forgiven him if he had murdered their mothers. Such scorn and contempt for the common people. The play later contains even stronger. In fact, only in this play, I would say, because really one can't quite find the tribute to the common man in this play, but hereafter, every play. And it figures in a play like this, Julius Caesar, after all. Okay, Casca then moves on, and Brutus and Cassius have one more word. The scene ends. The next few scenes I can summarize. The next few scenes show Casca trying to influence Brutus secretly, trying to manipulate him. He has people writing notes to Brutus and throwing these notes into Brutus's window, written in different hands, of course. Brutus, arise, save the Republic. This man Caesar is going to take all the power, and there will not be a republic anymore. Brutus, help us. All this is going to work on poor Brutus, because the man is torn. We get the one scene with Portia, his wife. Boy, I forgot something important. A lot of details here. It's going to be easy to overlook some. Back there in... Oh, gee. Okay. After Brutus and Cassius kind of part, we get a wonderful scene. Just a little exchange between Mark Antony and Caesar. Antony says, Caesar says to Antony, what do you think, Antony, of Cassius there? Cassius says he's a noble man. And Caesar says, young Cassius has a lean and hungry look. He thinks too much. He reads too much. He's not a party guy like you, Antony. He's serious, and when he looks at people seriously. I wish he were fatter, because fat men, he implies, love comfort. Fat men can be controlled, because they love comfort, they love their own convenience, they don't like to exert themselves too much. Oh, sharp. But Cassius is not one of these, and I don't trust him. And Antony seems to say, no, he's a noble man and well given. Caesar says a few more words, and then Caesar says, come to my right ear, because this one is deaf, and tell me what you really think. Wow. 2 things. One, we are finding a checklist of flaws in Caesar. Flaws of character and physical too. And now we begin to think that that so-called infertility of Calpurnia is really a barrenness, a sterility of Caesar himself. There's not Calpurnia who's the problem there. Deaf in the left ear. But even more important, I think, is until now we have regarded Antony as a fool. But Caesar doesn't trust fools. Caesar doesn't. Caesar, one of the sharpest men in history, probably, would not have as his right-hand man, his trusted advisor, Antony, if Antony were a fool. And this means that Caesar knows very well that Antony is not telling him what Antony really thinks. Come to my other ear and tell me what you really think. And now we realize not only that, but we realize that Antony is a very, very sharp man. And really, arguably, all things considered, he's the sharpest of all of Shakespeare's characters. Yes, he is. He is the most intelligent, the most remarkable, really, of all Shakespeare's creations. Hamlet, an intellectual, but he's nothing compared with Mark Antony, really. King Lear, just choose any others. None is a match for Mark Antony. Okay. So, and that's important. So now come these scenes in which they're influencing Brutus to join the conspiracy. Let me not leave anything else out. Portia even says, Brutus, what's wrong? You don't sleep at night. You walk and pace the floor during dinner. Tell me what's going on. My health isn't good. I know you better than that. Am I supposed to be your concubine or your wife? If I'm your wife, this is high praise for marriage, really, in this play. If I'm your wife, then I'm your partner and you can trust me with anything. Tell me what's really going on. And she is pretty moving. She kneels to him. Now, the mere fact of kneeling is not so moving in itself, but it moves Brutus tremendously. And that's important too, because we see Brutus, what kind of man he really is. And he's a wonderful man. Now, what's the tragedy about? Just to orient ourselves toward what's going on. What the tragedy is about is that Brutus will join the conspiracy for the wrong reasons. He's going to fool himself and be swept along with the consequences, which are vast, because the result of the murder will be a civil war, a terrible civil war, in which thousands were killed, and Italy was ravished really by that civil war, and all because of Brutus's joining the conspiracy for the wrong reasons. Watch what happens. It's pretty subtle, I think. Maybe not everyone knows this, but I assume that it's. I don't know what the scholars say, and I'm not putting myself above them. Shakespeare scholars are brilliant. In the age of information and of scholarship, which I've commented on this before, the 20th century certainly was, the discoveries made about Shakespeare were vast. And what it amounts to is very intelligent scholars of literature, of course, will choose Shakespeare. They will not choose Dickens and other lesser authors. They will choose the best, and Shakespeare was the best. And so the brilliant observations and the brilliant analyses of the plays of Shakespeare are in some ways the best written works in the 20th century, better than the novels and things like that. I'm prejudiced in these matters, I'm sure, and I haven't read many of the novels, I confess, but I suspect that may be true, not only about Shakespeare, but about the other greats too. In the end, their writings are better than the novels, I suspect, that were written in the 20th century. That's an interesting view. More intelligent, anyway. Okay. So, Brutus, it's implied, does tell Portia what's going to happen. Now, the other major thing I left out, while Antony and Caesar were moving from square one to square two, going back a little bit here, suddenly a soothsayer cries out, "Caesar, beware the Ides of March." Famous line, Ides 15th. Beware the Ides of March. What? Bring that man over here. What's going on here? Man, everybody says, come over here. Caesar says, it's got to be done. Caesar, beware the Ides of March. Caesar, who is superstitious, nevertheless thinks, oh, come on, nonsense. What do I have to fear? Always, Caesar is Caesar. He's going to say this in a few speeches, so I think I better establish it now. Always Caesar is Caesar. Other men, lesser men of course, are subject to this or this, like changing their minds or being afraid. But Caesar does not know fear. Fear is afraid of Caesar. Okay, we're collecting Caesar's flaws. And this kind of silly arrogance, this kind of silly, I'm immortal, I'm bigger than life, is hubris, of course. Once again, that reckless irreverence, really, that huge arrogance. I'm infallible, I'm immortal. Well, it's a sure sign of disaster. It's a guarantee in life. Anytime we individually or collectively regard ourselves as infallible in anything, well, of course, it's a totally silly thing to say. So we're collecting these flaws of Caesar, and they are mounting. The number is mounting. The soothsayer has predicted. Okay, we get the storm scene late at night, the night before the Ides of March. Tremendous storm, and this is referred to in Macbeth. It's referred to in Hamlet. It's like it became almost a myth itself. That tremendous storm in Rome on March 14th, on that night, when prodigies, marvelous wonders occurred. They're famous, but they need not be rehearsed here. Okay. Then, that same night, the conspirators come to visit Brutus. During the night, 2, 3 a.m. maybe. Brutus is troubled. We get a nice scene twice in the play of Brutus with the boy Lucius. Lucius is his slave, his servant. 15, 16 years old perhaps, I think. And Brutus's relationship with him is wonderful, because he treats him like a son. Not just a son, really, so gentle. Brutus is a gentle man. He's his judge. By the way, his position in this society is judge. And he's a judge who's loved. And he's a gentle man. And he can't be harsh toward anyone. And that's true too. And he's debating. Before the conspirators arrive, in a soliloquy, Brutus says, it's true, Caesar must die. Now this speech is in some ways the key speech in the play, because it's in this speech when Brutus will arrive at the conclusion that Caesar must die. What are his reasons why Caesar must die? What justifies this? Because he's going to join a conspiracy, a murder of this great man who was like a father to him. The reason is basically that if Caesar arrives at power, then he might disregard all the other people who put him there, all the other people who are lesser, who then would be his subordinates. Or, the key analogy is like an adder, like a poisonous snake. When the snake is hatched, the snake will bite people and kill people. Maybe. I mean, probably. That's what poisonous snakes do, isn't it? So, it's better to kill him in the egg, crush the egg, so that that adder doesn't kill somebody. But wait a minute. This analogy is wrong and is false. It's not at all clear that Caesar is an adder. And it's certainly not clear that he will kill people and be harmful to Rome. This is not established at all. On this analogy, on this false analogy, hinges Brutus's reasoning, and it's for this reason that he concludes, must kill Caesar. But the analogy is false. It's not demonstrated at all, nor does Brutus even believe that Caesar is like a poisonous snake. Now, what produces this? Brutus is exhausted. He hasn't slept for a month, at least, more than a month, because a month passes between Act 1, Scene 1, and Act 1, Scene 1 basically takes place on February, the Ides of February. During that month, Brutus sleeps very little, he eats badly, or not at all, and he's constantly worried and agonizing over this decision about what to do about Caesar. The next day, on the Ides of March, Caesar is supposed to appear at the Senate, and the Senate is supposed to, everyone knows it, give him a crown, basically making him emperor, the first emperor, the end of the Republic. So tomorrow is a key day, the Ides of March, and we know it already because the soothsayer already warned Caesar, assuming that the soothsayer is right. So Brutus has decided to join them. My lord, a group of men is at the door. Who are they? I don't know. Their faces are covered. Let them come in. Show them in. In come Cassius and the conspirators for this great scene. Brutus says, Cassius, a word. Come over here. I want to talk with you. And in that conversation, we realize Brutus will tell Cassius that he will join them. Very strangely, but not so strangely, Shakespeare is not going to show us the conversation between them, which after all is historically important, but not dramatically. Shakespeare instead will focus on the other conspirators, Decius, Cinna, Casca too, I think. And one will say to the other, where does the sun, where's the east, where's the sun supposed to come out? Doesn't it come up over there? No, it comes up over there. That's where the east is. No, you're both wrong. It comes up over there. I'm exaggerating. No, you're wrong. Why does Shakespeare show us this scene? Because he's showing us that the conspirators cannot even agree among themselves on something so basic as where the sun comes up. How can they possibly hang together? This conspiracy is not very promising at all. That's what Shakespeare is telling us in that remarkable little scene. And there are remarkable scenes like that throughout Shakespeare, which are the kinds of things that the brilliant critics discover and analyze. And I've learned much of what I've learned from them, and I wish I had taken, or I wish I had more time to read them. But there are many brilliant books and articles about Shakespeare plays. Okay, so then Brutus and Cassius return. He's with us. And so now begin a series. I once counted them. It's at least 10, maybe 12. I think that, let's say 10. 10 consecutive instances going all the way to the end of the play when Cassius or one of the other conspirators says, let's do this. And every time Brutus says, no. And every time the others yield. And this will become so huge in the play that we must keep our eyes focused closely on this series of things. Cassius says, let's... what's he say first? I'm sorry. Let's all swear an oath. And Brutus says, no, if we can't trust each other without the oath, then the oath won't do any good anyway. And they admit he's right. I think most people would. The oath wasn't a bad idea, and it shows Cassius's distrust, basically, of people, and Brutus's trust. But Brutus is right, maybe, in this. From now on, Brutus will be wrong almost every time. But Cassius will be right almost every time. But so great is the ascendancy, the influence, the respect accorded Brutus by everyone, including Cassius, that everyone yields. Okay. And then Brutus gives an important speech showing his idealism. He says, let's stop this cloak and dagger covering our faces. What we're doing for Rome, and our cause is honorable. Let's not act like or feel ourselves to be conspirators in any bad sense. And let's sacrifice Caesar like an offering to the gods, not kill him like a dog or an animal whom we're killing for meat. We're offering up a dish for the gods. But wait, we're all going to stick our daggers in that man, mostly in his back, right? No, Brutus, your image of this is wrong. It's just your desperate attempt to ennoble what is not a noble deed. Here we go. Brutus's idealism, again and again, will be too strong. Okay, then they all have joined in this conspiracy. How are we going to get... There's a rumor that Caesar, in his superstition, will not go to the Senate tomorrow. But if he doesn't go to the Senate tomorrow, our conspiracy is dead. We could kill him in his house, but we want to kill him at the base of... in the Senate. In front of the Senate, in front of some statue, because of the symbolic value of the reasons, the patriotic reasons, basically, why we are going to kill Caesar. Decius, very sharp. All these Romans were very sharp, as depicted. Decius says, "No problem. I'll get him to come to the Senate. I'll just tell him that basically what he will tell Caesar is, Caesar, you are so sharp, no one can flatter you. You're nobody's fool." And Caesar will fall for it every time, thus being flattered. But Caesar will not perceive that he's being flattered at those times by those words. Very sharp. Decius so sharp. So Decius will be able to control and manipulate Caesar and get him to come. Okay. Then we shift to Caesar's house. Calpurnia begs Caesar not to go to the Senate. She had a dream in which Caesar spouts blood from every place in his body, and the Roman people bathe their hands in his blood. She has a bad feeling that Caesar is going to be murdered. And Caesar says, gives his speech about fear is, I'm Caesar. Fear is afraid of me. But if you wish, Calpurnia, okay, I will stay home. Well, what Mark Antony says, what shall I tell the Senate? Tell the Senate Caesar wants to stay home. Enter Decius. I've decided, Decius, not to go. Why? Calpurnia had this dream. Decius then says, you're misinterpreting the dream, Caesar. This dream means that you are this giving person, and the people of Rome will bathe in your giving nature and be refreshed and be revived by your giving nature. You've just misinterpreted the dream. You're right. You're right, Decius. I will go. And Decius says, besides, before he tells about the dream, he says, what shall I tell the people? Shall I tell the Senate? Shall I tell the Senate that no, Caesar can't come until Calpurnia has better dreams? Whoa, brilliant. Senate, Caesar can't come until Calpurnia has a nice dream instead of a bad dream. Well, it sounds absurd. And Caesar admits it. It's just too absurd. And then Decius interprets the dream, and Caesar says, you're right, Decius. Of course I'll go. Lead on. And so Decius, totally successful in manipulating Caesar. And the next scene, we're now in Act 3, will be the murder scene. The assassination. On their way to the Senate, the same soothsayer says, beware the Ides of March again. Today's the Ides of March. And another man, Artemidorus, has a letter that he's a school teacher, has a letter that he wants to give to Caesar. But it's hard to get near Caesar. Everybody wants to be near Caesar. So we know what Artemidorus' letter says, though, and it says, "Beware Brutus, beware Cassius, beware Decius, beware Cinna, Casca, beware these guys. Beware, they are plotting to kill you." Wait a minute. How does this mere school teacher know about the plot? And if he knows about it, there must be many people who know about it. Who is he? There must be many people. Well, this heightens the dramatic tension of the scene tremendously. Okay, but Artemidorus can't get near, and so Caesar goes to the capital. At the capital, the plan is this. What's his name? Trebonius, I think. Let's say Trebonius. Trebonius' brother was banished by Caesar. Caesar doesn't trust him. He was banished. So Trebonius plans to approach Caesar and beg Caesar to reinstate Trebonius' brother, let him return. And the other conspirators are going to approach Caesar too, asking Caesar to grant Trebonius' request. Meanwhile, Casca will lure Mark Antony away, telling him he wants to talk with him about something. That's interesting. Antony has to be lured away for this to work. Antony is a sharp man and already a great military man. And we know about the greatness of Mark Antony's military feats from Antony and Cleopatra. So this is a careful plot. Everything happens just that way. I've got to take shortcuts. The first to strike Caesar from the back is Casca. I must be wrong about that detail, but I remember that, and that's okay. And then soon all of the others stab him. And then the famous moment when Caesar sees, apparently, Brutus with a knife in his hand too. Et tu, Brute? You too, Brutus? Then falls Caesar. Boom. Brutus stabs him too. Caesar is dead. The crowd screams, of course, consternation. Alarm, my God, the greatest man in the world has just been killed right here. Scream and run. And Mark Antony runs too. 12-1, what's he going to do? So, and he rightly fears, before another idea of Brutus, of Cassius, rejected by Brutus. Cassius says, should Caesar be the only one to die, or how about Mark Antony? And somebody else says, yes, I think he's dangerous. He's a dangerous man. We better kill him too. But Brutus says, no, he's not dangerous. He's simply a puppet of Caesar's, totally underestimating. It's a gross misreading of a man's character. Huge error. It shows Brutus really to be a bad judge of character right there. Because as I've told you, Mark Antony is a giant. He's already a giant. So now we have to question Brutus's ability to evaluate people. He's blind. He's an idealist. No, we don't. Our cause will seem too bloody if we start killing other people. Antony or Cicero, same thing. Cassius says, he's dangerous. No. How about Cicero? He's dangerous too. And Brutus says, no problem. And on this one he happens to be right, because Antony will put Caesar to death later. Interesting. So, Caesar is dead in Act 3, Scene 3, right in the middle of the play. And now comes some serious stuff. What should we do? First of all, Brutus says, let's bathe in Caesar's blood up to our elbows. Symbolic. He's an idealist. Symbolic. He fails to realize that the sight of these men with blood all over up to their elbows, covered in blood too, their clothes, whatever they're wearing, spattered with Caesar's blood, This is a sickening, if not a very disturbing sight. But Brutus sees it only for its symbolic value. So, another bad decision by Brutus, this bathing thing. And then a servant of Mark Antony's approaches Brutus and says, Antony asks permission to come and talk to you and hear from you why Caesar deserved to die. And Brutus says, sure, let him come. And we get a wonderful scene. The rest of the play is wonderful. Antony approaches. At first he sees the dead. This is not so emotional, but Antony is so great. At first he's moved by the sight of this father figure of his dead, and it must have been a terrible sight. They even covered it up a little bit, but it's a terrible sight. And he weeps. And from here on, we have to wonder, he's so intelligent, you have to wonder what he's doing. One suspects sometimes that he's in absolute control of everything he does. He's already thought it through. He's more intelligent than Odysseus. But I think those cheers are sincere. He certainly was very devoted to Caesar. But then he asks, why? And Brutus says that he, Brutus, will give a speech to the crowd to allay the fears of the crowd, explaining to them why Caesar deserved to die. Antony then says, gentlemen, I don't know how you regard me. If it were now to die, it were now best to die. Oh, I'm mutilating it, but it's a great, great speech. He says, if I have to die, I know of no better time to die than right now, at Caesar's side. And even, come on. And even by the same knives that killed Caesar, the noblest blood in the world, in the history of the world, he thinks. Okay, so they say, no, we don't mean to kill you. Then let me shake hands with you. And a very wonderful, moving, disturbing scene, really, but wonderful. He shakes hands with each of the conspirators. Thus, the bloody hands with Caesar's blood on them. Well, symbolically, he seems to be saying, well, you can trust me. You can trust me. Then they all move away from him. Oh, no. Then he asks Brutus if after Brutus speaks, that may he, Antony, give a funeral oration about Caesar. And Brutus says, sure. And Cassius says, Brutus, you're crazy. The people are in a very upset, very unstable mood. You don't know what Antony might do to that crowd. No problem. Cassius, you're wrong. Well, this is the biggest mistake in the whole play. The biggest by far, unless a bigger one was not killing Mark Antony. But this is one of the biggest blunders in history, in a way, because by letting Mark Antony speak, he's going to change the world. He'll change the world. And Cassius says, no, don't do this. Basically, you vastly underestimate this man. And Brutus says, no problem, Cassius. So that's what's going to happen. And then they move off for Brutus to give his speech. And Antony, alone with the body of Caesar, says, I'm sorry. I'm sorry I shook their hands, these bastards, is what he's basically saying. And he's right, really. None of them had high motives. The only one who sort of had high motives was Brutus, but Brutus's final reason for killing Caesar was muddled thinking. And Shakespeare shows that pretty clearly. Admirable? No. He's still an admirable man. Brutus is an admirable man. His tragedy is that he got involved in this conspiracy for the wrong reasons. Okay. Now, this gets into a heavy subject, which I'll get into next time, which is how much are we to admire Brutus? That's a rough one. It's often said Dante puts Brutus in the jaws of Lucifer, in the very bottom of hell, for killing the great man. And Shakespeare glorifies Brutus. I think that's a big overstatement. Shakespeare does not glorify Brutus. Shakespeare does not justify Brutus, really. Shakespeare makes Brutus a tragic character, much like Hamlet. Do we admire Hamlet? Hamlet messes up badly, as we see in Act 3. He makes bad decisions. His character, even his character, is questionable. Brutus too, and the two have a lot in common. After all, Brutus and Hamlet have a lot in common. So, Brutus gives his little speech in which he says, it's quite short and it's very logical. That's the point. It's very coherent and logical. I killed Caesar, we killed Caesar for the following reasons. Ambitious, blah, blah. And the crowd, the reactions of the crowd are, yes, I think he's right. Yes, you're right, Caesar deserved to die. More of this vilification, really, of the common man, because the common man is presented as a simpleton. And it's disturbing. Yes, the play has a strong anti-democratic flavor. Strong. I'll get into that heavily tomorrow. So, the crowd, he's right. Brutus is right. Brutus is an honorable man. Brutus is a noble man. Everybody agrees. And his reasons for killing